Hi there, I'm Ben Jones and welcome back to Dukascopy TV for today's edition of Commodities Corner. We've seen the effect that the crisis in Ukraine has had on the global oil markets, but how is it affecting grain? Joining me on the line to discuss this is agriculture analyst Abah Ofon from Standard Chartered. So Abah, to begin with, can you explain how the crisis in Ukraine has affected global prices of grain? Prices have fluctuated following the overthrow of President Yanukovych, but overall, what's been the impact?
I think what's happened is that the crisis in Ukraine has added bullish sentiments to the grains market, which had been undermined by a record harvest globally. To just put things into perspective, Ukraine actually accounts for about 6 to 7% of the global trade in wheat and has traditional markets in the Middle East and North Africa and in Europe, primarily supplying feed wheat in Europe and supplying milling wheat in Asia and Africa. And we understand that about 50% of wheat produced in Ukraine is low to medium quality wheat. So the crisis in Ukraine, if it does escalate, but could potentially constrain supplies out of Ukraine into these markets and lead to increased demand for other sources, including the US, Europe, and Australia. So this is really adding some bullish sentiment in the market at the moment, and we have seen wheat prices actually move up on the back of this news.
Now, the US are expected to see more and more grain exports, as many countries don't want to buy from a country that has a potential supply disruption. So what happens globally to the grain market if this crisis continues or even escalates?
So far, speaking with stakeholders in the sector, the industry in Ukraine has not been that severely affected yet. So we're still seeing cargoes loading, and we're still seeing traditional markets being supplied. But I think we must understand as well that Ukraine's 2013-2014 crop has largely been exported, and therefore the fallout from this crisis on the wheat sector in the short term is likely to be muted. But to the extent that clients or end users are looking for other markets, that is creating some bullish sentiments in the market. We have seen a sharp rise in wheat prices. We have seen speculative positioning, which was very short in the wheat market, being covered, and that has added momentum to wheat prices over the last few weeks. But just looking at the S&D and looking at the fundamentals, there are a number of markets or a number of players who can actually step in and fill in any potential gaps left by Ukraine. So Russia, for example, which has had a very buoyant harvest for 13-14, could step in. We could also see Canada, Australia, which has had a good harvest as well, or even countries such as Kazakhstan. They collectively account for about 131 million tons of wheat in the 13-14 season, and therefore there is ample supply in the market. But I think the risk is growing, particularly if this crisis escalates, and particularly if it does go on for a sustained period of time. Then it would have end users more worried about potential supply disruptions.
Abah, thank you very much for talking to us today. That is all for today's edition of Commodities Corner. Thanks for watching, and make sure you tune in for the rest of the week for even more updates and exclusive interviews. Goodbye.